Hello and welcome to episode 50 of Bloggers Are Weird. I'm your host, DJ Paris from the blog thoughtsfromparis.com. Today on the show we have humor blogger Allison Arnone, who is, I think, a huge talent. Also somebody I write with. We have a column together on our respective blogs called Allison and DJ Fix Your Stupid Problems. And it's an advice column that we do monthly. But in addition to that, Allison is an amazingly talented writer on her own. I'm proud to be working with her. And you should definitely be checking her out at AllisonArnone.com. So without further ado, grab a highball of Long Island iced tea, or whatever your drug of choice is. Mine would be the non-alcoholic Long Island iced tea. They make those. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Okay, so the name of this post is Booty Emergency. To quote my friend Megan, I'm a big booty fan. And even though it came out sounding like she was talking about a Kim Kardashian-style derriere, she actually meant the shoe version of booty. And you know what? I'm a big booty fan too. So when I took off of work on Friday to go shopping with my mom, I couldn't help but notice a cute pair in, well, I can't say the name of the store. I'm too embarrassed because of what transpired. Listen, you guys, I'm a moderately smart person. I have common sense and street smarts and even some minimal book smarts. But every once in a while, I do something stupid, so embarrassingly stupid, and it makes me question my entire existence. Friday afternoon was one of those days. All right, here goes. I spotted a pair of cognac-colored suede booties in the store I cannot name and immediately checked for my size. Lo and behold, the first ones I picked up were a size 7, exactly what I was looking for. It was shoe fate. I decided to throw my foot into the right shoe to see how it fit and felt, and I turned to my mother, as I often do, for guidance. What do we think? I don't like that big buckle on the side, she told me. I looked down. The buckle/zipper was kind of big, and did I really need another pair of booties? Probably not. I crouched down to take them off, and the zipper on that big buckle my mother just insulted was stuck. What the... I sat down on the floor to get better traction and tried my hardest to pull the zipper down. It didn't budge. Oh my God, I'm shoe trapped. I enlisted the help of my mom, standing in the store like complete bozos, me balancing on one leg while she held onto my ankle, attempting to unzip this godforsaken shoe. She could not get it either. Wonderful. A teenage sales associate walked by at that moment and saw our awkward struggle and asked if we needed help. Who, us? No, nothing to see here. Just a 33-year-old woman trapped in one of your shoes with her mother trying to pry them off. Keep it moving. I'm kidding. I actually told him what happened, and he looked confused, unsure of how to handle the situation. He called for reinforcements. Another young gentleman quickly showed up, and I once again explained my predicament. I'm now getting hot. I feel a slight panic attack coming on. This stupid shoe is making the walls close in around me. This nice young fella does his very best to pull, tug, and tear at this zipper to no avail. I'm now realizing I haven't shaved my legs in a day or two, and he's all up close and personal to my unfortunate ankle stubble situation, which is making me feel much worse. I hate this. I look up, and my mother is laughing, about to take pictures of me in my innocent and vulnerable state. Don't you dare, woman. Next thing I know, a manager-type dude, who, by the way, why do only men work here, comes over with a pair of scissors, and they're going to need to cut me out of this booty like the jaws of life. The young sales associate takes the scissors to the shoe, and I immediately feel the metal blade touch my skin. Let me do that, I tell him, just in case you cut me. I don't want to have to sue the store after all this. I'm now making jokes to try and lighten the mood and distract everyone from the fact that I am in a clothing store and stuck in their merchandise. So I attempt to cut through suede. Have you ever done this? It's frickin' impossible. I made a slight tear, barely an inch deep, but it's not enough to get me out. I'm really starting to panic now. Someone says something about a box cutter, and I think I blacked out. That's when it happens. Someone suggests me trying to cut through the other side of the boot, the side opposite of the bulky ass buckle, so I flip my ankle around. And there was oh God, brace yourself, a regular zipper. The zipper I used to get this fucking boot on in the first place. I was never stuck. I was attempting to unzip a fake buckle. The real zipper was, and always was, on the other side. I had my mom and 3 separate men trying to get me to get this shoe off when all I had to do was look on the left and pull down the normal-ass functioning zipper. I lost a part of myself in the store that day, including my dignity, but I'll tell you this. My mom and I laughed for the entire rest of the day about it and laughed again that night when we recanted the story for my dad. It's just too good not to share. And the store was awesome about it, despite the fact that I cut up and ruined a perfectly good booty.
Today on the show, we have Allison Arnone, who you just heard read. Allison is a 30-something single... We know exactly how old you are, but a 30-something single New Yorker whose work has been featured on Huffington Post, Thought Catalog, XO Jane, Blog Her, She Knows, Scary Mommy, Your Tango, and my old writing grounds in the Powder Room, to just name a few. She's a wannabe photographer, a beach bum, and a city girl, someone with an unhealthy Beyonce obsession and a fashion music is a fashion music social media and political junkie. She resides in Long Island, New York, works in Manhattan, the market research and digital field. She is also very moody, although she wrote that. And actually, in talking to you, you're not moody, but just online you can be moody.
No, in real life too, but thank you.
welcome to Bloggers World, and thank you, because I have to tell everyone this is our second attempt at this. We did a full hour, and sadly,
I still haven't really recovered from doing an entire podcast that basically went right in the trash.
It did, and you have to understand, like, I've got that part of me that everything is my fault anyway, the way I see it, and everyone else's experiences, everything's my responsibility. So when something like that goes wrong, which really, it was, I didn't do anything wrong. It just like whatever, just kind of happened. I always just, it's like the worst day ever. So no,
it's okay. It's fine. It's just a night I'll never get back. 2 hours worth of speaking in August.
To be honest, watching Law and Order SVU was all you were going to do anyway.
So
haven't
Love
you seen
that show?
Yeah, they always find out new ways to make pedophiles exciting. So anyway, let's also talk a little bit more about you. You, by the way, people can, if you're not familiar with Allison, she can be found at AllisonArnone.com, which is AllisonArnone.com. Up until the first time we tried to record this, I have been calling you Allison Arnone, which you had corrected me prior, and I somehow got it wrong in my brain, and so I'm glad I finally did it correctly. But
yes, thank you.
A little bit more about you. Allison considers herself a nicheless blogger, writes about personal experiences or opinions on current events, politics, pop culture, dating, relationships, and adventures in womanhood, and has good old-fashioned rants and advice. She and I also write a column together that we both post on our own blogs, where we give advice to people, called Allison and DJ Fix Your Stupid Problems.
You should probably put advice in quotes.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because I originally, many, many years ago, I had started writing a column similar to what we were doing with a really great writer named Rachel Thompson, and she and I did it a handful of times. And she had looked into it a little bit further, and the reason we stopped is there was some potential legal liability with the way we were promoting it, because we're not therapists or whatever. So it got kind of spooked. I mean, she's like kind of a big deal in the publishing world, or at least way bigger deal. I mean, I'm no deal in it, but she was like, we can't do this because there's too much liability. So
wow, that's like the nerdiest thing to get in legal trouble for.
Yeah, well, I mean, the good news about all that is I don't think we're that important to anyone, but
speak for yourself.
Oh, okay. So
it's not real advice, though. It's a little satirical and tongue-in-cheek, but I think that's what makes it funny. Because we're not like Ann Landers over here. I don't have any business giving people real advice.
I disagree. I actually, No, well, yeah, I mean, Ann Landers. Well, what's great about Ann Landers is she hated her sister with like a vigor that is not as well known because her sister was Dear Abby, right?
Right. So that kind of speaks to our relationship a little bit too.
It really does. Like we're very nice, polite people. We've only spoken. This is only a third time ever we've spoken, and the second time was the last show that got unfortunately didn't go out. But other than that. I actually do think we have a lot of interesting points to make on, with the advice, where I think that we are qualified to give advice because we're both pretty, rational, intelligent human beings. But the way that we do it through humor, I think gives us a lot of, like, people will read it and laugh and probably not realize that behind the humor we're actually telling them kind of what to do. I think every time we've actually written an answer to a question has really been our most, we joke around a bit, but I think it's pretty sincere to what we actually would say to that person.
No, you're right. You're right. There is a humor aspect to it. So some of them are a little bit more goofy in the responses, but I think a lot of mine are actually genuinely what I would tell you if you were sitting across from me and complaining about something.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And it's one of those things I heard George Carlin used to talk about this. He said, the best part about humor is you can use humor to kind of slip in an idea without it being necessarily as obviously detected. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets under the radar and goes right into someone's mind. So that's kind of what we do. I definitely have, used some of the times we've written together to make jokes that.
Of course. Well, you told a woman who said that her father was mistreating animals to bury him in the backyard with some other animals he had probably killed. I don't know how serious you were about it.
I was serious.
Okay.
I was serious that he should not be allowed to have animals, as far as euthanizing your father. I mean, I feel very strongly, I was married to a veterinarian. I have pets. It's one of those things where, and what's really funny about that particular question? I'm so glad you brought it up because I got a message from one of my readers. And again, I just sort of have this no one really pays any attention to what I say. Like I had written something similar months and months ago, or maybe it was even close to a year ago, where I said most of us really shouldn't vote because most of us really don't know what's going on. And I thought that was a not entirely unintelligent sort of idea.
No, that might be the first thing you said I semi-agree with, but go on.
Okay. Well, but people got really offended, and they were like, how dare you suggest people should... I'm like, look, I want, my thing in the story was like, I want people in Mensa voting. Like, I want those people voting. They're pretty smart. I want, the top neuroscientists and neurophysicists. I want those people, and I want leaders of industry and people who are considered successes. I want, intelligent, people who have healthy lives voting. But I don't think the vast majority of America, and I'm included, I feel like I know mostly what's going on, and I don't feel like I even have barely enough of an opinion to vote. But anyway, when I wrote that piece about, or when I wrote that answer to the question about, hey, bury your father out back with a dead dog, which I thought was very funny.
Oh, it was.
But it was also, there was some serious anger that was very real in that. Somebody wrote me, and she was like, that's the she said something like that is, I'm so proud of you for writing that. And I didn't mean to make it, I was really just goofing around. But she was really taken by that and said, she has a thing about animal cruelty, I guess, too. But anyway, we like doing it. But let's talk about you. So
yes, please.
You grew up in Long Island.
Yes, I did, which you like to make jokes of often. DJ calls me the Long Island Lita about once a week.
Yeah, well, I love that you've made it a good 9 miles from home. So you haven't
live in
traveled
Manhattan
far
for 5 years, but then I came back because once you leave, you always get sucked back in. Plus, I want mom's eggplant parmesan on Sundays.
Oh, I wish I was Italian.
Well, you're not. I've seen pictures of you. You've got the tan of an Italian person.
And on the nose, but
DJ's the whitest human being alive. Just in case you don't know.
Oh yeah, no, it's
you're almost see-through.
It's embarrassing. It's one of those things where I think I was in high school, senior year, when you're at your feeling your worst about yourself as a man, and I'm I just kind of went, and I used to hang out at the pool every day, all day, all summers and whatever. I mean, I was working too, but I was out, and I was like, this is just, I'm never going to be tan. And it was pretty depressing because it wasn't It wasn't like I went, well, I'll never be tan, but at least I'm handsome. I was like, I'll be ugly and like translucent my whole life. So it was a very depressing time. But back to you. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you're interested, because one of the big reasons that I really appreciate what Allison writes about is she really puts her opinion into her writing and has an opinion, and it's not in just off the cuff kind of visceral reaction to something. It's a relatively well thought out, and researched and sort of well formed opinion, and that's one of the reasons I was very drawn to working with you, is because you've pushed me to like start to have more opinions about things. I like to sort of play both sides of the fence,
like on your gun control stand.
Well, yeah, I don't know enough about it. I just know that I shot a gun once in the desert of Scottsdale with a guy, and it was like one of those 6 shooters, and I got 5 of the 6 targets. I hit it. He was like, "You're a natural at this," and I was like, "Wow." And then I was like, "I should never." Have you ever shot a gun? I've never.
No.
That was it. No, it's.
And I wouldn't want to be a gun owner either, even for protection, just because I'm such a high-strung lunatic that if someone just walked by my apartment, I'd probably shoot them. It's not a good idea.
Well, here's an even, for sure, and then here's an even, but for me it would even go deeper, because I don't have a sense of fear of my safety. It would be more like, what if I had a really bad day?
Ooh, and that's dark.
What I'm saying is, if you look at the stats of police officers who commit suicide, it's insane. And I think a lot of it's just because they have access. I mean, it's right there.
Ooh, yeah.
And I think all it takes is your worst day and a bad couple of turns in life, and that gun is there. It's one of those things where I just think no good is going to come from me having a gun. Either I'm going to shoot someone or I'm going to shoot myself.
Yeah, no guns for you.
Or I'm going to be just a weird gun guy.
No,
you don't want to be.
You don't want to be the weird gun guy.
Have you met anyone as they've gotten older who just out of nowhere is like, "Oh yeah, I have a few guns," and you're like, "Really? Do you?"
I don't think so. No, thankfully, I think I really don't like them. I'm very uncomfortable around them, so I don't want to be around people who just collect them like they're stamps.
Yeah, I have one person just recently in the last 5 years who out of nowhere was like, "Oh yeah, I have a few guns." I was like, "What? Why?" And then he was like, "Well, protection." And I was like, "Do you carry them around?" No, they're in a safe. They're I don't know. And then
an argument with the whole safe thing. Well, because if somebody was in your bedroom and you've got to get a gun out of a safe, I just don't think you have the time to really take action. Yeah. But we're kind of steering off course because now we're talking about guns.
Well, you brought up my.
I did. Well, because you were talking about your political views and your gun control stance is what made me realize you're probably one of those people who shouldn't vote.
I shouldn't, because to me, I like the idea. Obviously, I don't think anyone probably with a rational mind would voting for Donald Trump is a weird choice. I think for people to make. Obviously, a lot of people make it, and that's fine. But me, I have a hard time understanding it. But part of me is like, wouldn't that be interesting just to see what happens? So I have that sort of mind. So not that, but I'm not thinking of actual consequences.
Right.
So I'm just like, oh, that'd be fun. And then that's why I shouldn't vote, because to me it's like, oh, that'd be kind of funny. And then it's like, no, none of that's funny. It's actually
that mindset is what got him to be the nominee, I think.
See, you think?
Yeah,
I think
people really were like, this would be funny, and they never took it really seriously, and then he got really far, and it was like, oh, shit.
And now they're stuck with him because they don't have another.
But I think you should tell people what your, you told me was your stance on gun control when we first met.
No, I didn't. Okay. So I was really worried when I first met Allison, because I think she was inherently distrustful of me, and we had talked once on the phone, and I probably just spoke way too much and too long. And and then I thought, oh, I should write something with her. And so we started chatting about things. And then it was right in the middle of the political cycle with the presidency. And, every couple of days there was some new crazy.
Well, I think they were voting on the gun control thing.
Oh, okay. And this was still, yeah, right. Okay. So this was also going on when people were getting shot by police officers and whatever. All this was happening and was very present in the news. And I just kind of was thinking out loud, because I knew Allison had actually, I've never actually talked about it with anyone, and I don't know anything about it. So I thought, I can have a conversation with Allison about this because she
Your
probably
first
knows.
mistake.
Well, and I was like, hey, what if we just gave the guns to like the really poor people who are in those areas where they're getting shot? And she was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And then you were like, don't ever talk to me again. You were almost were like, don't ever talk to me again. No,
It was
I
the
remember.
stupidest thing I had ever heard. But, I mean, I'm still chatting with you, so obviously.
That's true. But I remember being on a date with a girl. This is how insane I am. I was on a date with a girl.
Or how insane she is for going on a date with you.
Yeah, well, we're no longer dating, so that would be maybe indicate. But this is maybe date 1 or date 2, and I go, I really want to write this thing with this girl. Her name's Allison, but like I feel like I'm pissing her off constantly. And by the way, I don't normally feel like I piss people off. I don't have that sense of like, oh, I'm destructive or I fuck things up. Like I really don't. And then, but with you, I wanted so badly to work on this project with you. And I go, and I just brought up this thing about gun control because I really didn't understand it. She got so mad at me. I go, I don't think she's going to work with me anymore. And this girl was like, she had to like talk me through it on our date. She was like, it'll be fine. She's, and I was like, I think she thinks I'm this like weirdo or whatever. Well, it was really funny. But
it all worked out.
It all worked out. But I want to, again, talking more about you, the reason why I wanted to work with you so badly is, number one, you make me laugh quite a bit. And I think that's, in our space, for somebody like you and I who aren't parents and also single, from time to time, you and I are both single, it's not as common. I mean, I think what's easy is, hey, I had a super shitty date. Let me write about how goofy my date was. But then to have anything more to say about it, I think is pretty rare. And that's what I read one of your pieces about, dating, which was the first thing I read that you did. I think it was XO Jane or whoever. And I was like, this is awesome. And,
yeah, there's a lot of bloggers out there that are very, because as you said in my little description, I consider myself to be nicheless. Because in the blogging world, it's kind of like you have to have a niche. You have to be a fashion blogger or a food blogger or a mommy blogger, which is like they basically take over the entire blogging stratosphere. But we're kind of a rare breed because when people ask me, well, what do you blog about? I don't really have an answer because it kind of just runs the gamut of everything from personal stuff to opinions to humor. And it's kind of like, not that I would ever compare myself to Seinfeld, but it's like the Seinfeld of blogs. It's like about nothing. And that's hard to find. And so I think we both do have that similar writing style. And we can talk about anything, which is good. We're not limited to, if you're a fashion blogger and all of a sudden you have this really great opinion on something that doesn't have to do with fashion, you're kind of screwed because you can't write about the election or current events or pop culture because your readers may be like, whoa, 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 we want to see your outfits and we don't want to hear what you have to say about anything.
Yeah, I've always thought that's so smart. I've always thought that it's so much better to have somebody fall in love with you and your writing versus your content. Meaning like the actual, niche or genre you might fall into. A good writer is a good writer, and we can kind of navigate through kind of all sorts of waters. But as long as somebody falls in love with our style or just likes, the humor we put in something, it allows us a ton of freedom. So if you wanted to do, like, for example, if you wanted to do a whole fashion sort of thing on your blog, it would work really well because you'd be bringing you to it.
Yeah, well, oddly enough, that my last post that's up right now is, it's kind of unconventional for me and a little unorthodox, but it's about online shopping, and it's kind of just some like tips and tricks that I've learned along the way on how to make it a more enjoyable experience, which sounds like what a bore. But if you read it, it reads in my voice, and there's a lot of humor components in there. And so it didn't feel weird to write it. And I don't think my readers are like, what is this garbage? I think it's like, it still sounds like her. And it's still, I do like other things other than talking about myself, believe it or not. So if I want to talk about something else, it still fits the theme always. So that's one thing I'm really proud of in my writing, that I can kind of go anywhere.
Do you wait for inspiration to hit you, or do you just force yourself to sit down and come up with something?
I really can't do the forcing thing. I've tried. Sometimes if I don't have a new post up for a little while, I start to feel this like internalized pressure, and I'll sit down in front of a computer and it's like a steaming hot pile of dog shit comes out. It's just never good. So it has to be something that kind of pops into my head. The online shopping hack post was, I wrote it in like an hour because of a conversation I had with someone, and I basically was telling them some of these tricks I learned, and then I was like, why isn't this a post? And then I wrote it in like 2 seconds. So those are the easiest ones to write because you basically write them in your head and just need to put them, down on the computer. So, but there's some of them I have thoughts for a while. I'm like, I know I want to write about this. I just don't know how I'm going to do it. And then one day when I get that motivation or inspiration is when I'll actually sit down to write it.
Yeah, I can't do that, unfortunately. I wish I was.
It?
I do.
Ooh.
I literally, no, I think for me, it's good because it forces me to create content out of nothing. And for me, if I sat around and waited for something to hit me, it wouldn't hit me. I ran out of things to talk. How I got that sort of some of those exercises down was I did this thing called the Ultimate Blog Challenge, which I had to write every single day for 30 days. And I went, okay, well, I have to write at least 300 words or whatever, but I ended up making it like 500 words. And I was like, I can't do this. There's no way. I don't have 30 stories. I don't even have 4 ideas, much less. But I was like, I'm going to do it. And it was kind of like one of those things where it's like they say in chess, if you want to learn chess, play like 7 matches at the same time and do it blindfolded. And, it's so overwhelming that eventually you just kind of like, then when you take the blindfold off and you're just playing one game, it's like, oh, this isn't so bad. And basically, so for 30 days, I had to do that where I had to write something. And not only was it pressure just to find the time to do it, and also the content, it was, you better make it good, because if you write 30 days of garbage, your audience is gone.
Right.
They don't care.
Exactly.
Like they don't care that I'm going through some sort of exercise. Like they just want to read funny, interesting content. And so it forced me. And by day 9, I was completely at my wit's end. I was like, I've got nothing. And then I just pushed through, and I ended up, going on and on and on from there. But it was one of those things where I've learned now how to try to find something out of nothing, but only because inspiration rarely hits me. I mean, I just don't get it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think every writer has a different process, and it's always interesting to hear what other people's are, because I can't kind of do it sporadically and off the cuff, because I've tried, and those are the posts I end up writing a few paragraphs, and I stare at it and I'm like, no, and I just delete it and walk away and hope that the next day something will come to me. And it has. I mean, I've been writing for 4.5 years, and I haven't had a really, really long stint of being like, I got nothing. It happens. And I think those are okay. I've learned to accept those little moments of writer's block. I'm not a professional writer. I'm not losing money when I don't write. It just is a pressure that I put on myself, which I think is a healthy thing.
Yeah, let's talk about pressure, because we didn't talk about this last time.
We can't reference last time. No one knows about last time except
I know. Well, and it's funny. Allison she's so sweet, and despite the fact that we sometimes do not get along, it is truly funny, because she said, well, we shouldn't even maybe talk about the stuff we talked about the first time, because then it will just kind of be forcing those conversations. And I felt that's what was so shitty about it, was like we actually had like a really interesting conversation about a few things. But here's something we didn't talk about, which was and again, Allison does not do this professionally, although she has been published all over the place. I'm in a similar capacity, but not as published as her. I don't do it to make money. She doesn't do it to make money. However, if the opportunity came up, and this isn't a slant towards your current employer, I love where I work. I know you like where you work too. But what would be the ultimate vision if you could sort of wave the magic wand? Would you want to do it full time, and what would that look like?
I've been asked this before, and my answer hasn't changed yet. I don't know if it eventually will, but I think that the reason I enjoy blogging for personal reasons so much is because of that. There's no pressure for me to write at a certain time or about certain topics or content. There's nobody telling me, to change anything, or I need this by tomorrow. And so I think the second you enter the world of deadlines and someone else maybe being in control of your words, I think it will lose its appeal. And so I have never experienced that. Sometimes I write for sites and they'll change some things around, but those are articles I specifically write for other sources, and so it's okay. But what goes on my blog is exactly what I want, and I don't feel even though I'll feel pressure about going a couple weeks without posting or something, it's never pressure on the content or, ooh, should I write about this? Because I don't have anyone else to sort of police that. So I don't think I'd want to do it professionally, because once it becomes a job, I think it will lose the enjoyment factor.
Yeah, I think there's just a few rarefied people that have made it into the space where they can make a tremendous living, and without that additional pressure from the editors or sponsors. But yeah, for the vast majority of us, it's one or the other, really.
Right.
And
in order to make money off of blogging, it's it is doable. I think making a really lucrative living off of it is hard, but the means that you have to take in order to get paid significantly are things that I think you and I have discussed in the past we're just not comfortable doing. And not knocking anybody who does do sponsored posts and promoted posts with brands, but I think I'd feel very much like I was selling my soul if I went from my style of writing to writing a post about how much I love Tide Pods or something. Like, I think people in my life would be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, you have to pick your sponsors real carefully. I did a thing years ago for Continental, and I do get asked to do things.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
Oh, well, the whole thing was funny. So, like, they had whatever it was, they had asked me to do 3 videos, and I paid me pretty well for to do them. And it was just me in front of my webcam talking about like toilet paper stories. And so I talked, I don't remember which ones I did, but they go, well, we just need to see it. We're going to insert a commercial in the middle of it. But, they liked me, and they said, we're probably not going to, I mean, once you put this together, we're not going to ask you to go re-edit it or whatever, but we'll just want to make sure you don't, screaming the F word in the middle of, the story that we're going to be promoting on Continental. So, but it was, they gave me this pretty wide berth, and anyway, it ended up, I think it worked out really well, and they seemed to like it and whatever. But that was one out of maybe 100 conversations I've had with other brands. And I don't get hardly those conversations at all, because I'm a guy and I'm not a parent, and I'm not in anybody's demographic for how to sell product. So I don't get a lot of that stuff. But I have had a lot of those conversations.
I mean, it's tempting. If I've gotten an email from brands that I actually really do like, and there's an opportunity to get free products and stuff, but I can't imagine a way to work in, a Keurig coffee machine into my writing as much as I would like to get a free one or those little coffee pods. It just doesn't fit. So I'm not comfortable doing it. Yeah,
well, it's absolutely. And so, like, in the last couple of years, my favorite one, and I'll just say it because they're never going to work with me anyway. They're called Track Phone. And if you don't know what Track Phone is, they're like the burner phones that drug dealers use.
Say that, yeah.
Right.
I think I've seen it in like The Wire.
Yeah, and The Wire is probably what put Track Phone on the map. So I met with whoever the marketing firm is that handles the Track Phone account, and they met with me. They asked for a meeting with me, which is insane because I'm whatever. And they go, well, we do have this other. They actually originally had me come in for a different client, but then they said, we do work with Track Phone. I go, the drug dealer Track Phone thing? And they go, yeah. And I wasn't speaking directly to Track Phone, so I felt like, okay, we can talk honestly here. And I said, I go, do they have a sense of humor? Do they get it? Do they get themselves? Like, are they aware, And they go, oh, yeah, they're aware. They get it, And I went, do they have a sense of humor? Because obviously, I don't know if they do or don't. And they were like, yeah, sort of, And so I said, why don't we do a funny thing about I'd be their very first non-drug dealing customer ever. And we can make – that's funny. Like, to me, that's a funny idea. But then, they said, oh, it's great. Everyone loved it until they actually pitched it to Track Phone, who probably – fired them, and then I never got the call back from there.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah, but you are right. I mean, it is a difficult thing. But what's so wonderful, and I wanted to ask you about this, is because we don't, there is no light at the end of there is no tunnel. We're not in a tunnel with a light at the end of it. It is why do you do it? What's the satisfaction?
I need to. I've always been a writer. Even as a kid, I mean, I don't think people realize that my writing didn't start 4.5 years ago. I mean, it started when I was like 4.5. I, for fun, used to write stories, and my parents thankfully saved some of them for comedic relief. But it's what I always loved to do and actually needed to do. And I used, as I got older, things like social media, Facebook, Twitter, as my creative outlet to get my voice and my opinion out there. And it wasn't until 2012 where I found myself with some free time. I had been laid off from a job I hated, and I was like, now what? And I forget who it was, but someone was like, start a blog. Like, please, you obviously, like, this is something I'm shocked you haven't done yet. And one day I just did it. And it now has become like, it's like breathing to me. It's like I need to do it, and it's therapy. It's cathartic. It's, if I have an opinion and I don't put it in my blog, it feels like a wasted thought. So it's actually just something I really enjoy doing, even if no one read it. Honestly, if everyone just stopped reading it, I'd still do it. And that's how you know you love something.
Yeah, I mean, it's that old. You're so right. I mean, it's that old expression. What do you love to do so much you do it for free, or even better, that you'd pay to do it? And the reality of it is, I pay to do this.
Right? Yeah, people don't realize that part.
Tremendous, even if it's, I mean, there's just tremendous expense to it, or some expense, depends on how much you invest into it. But then there's also just the time cost of money too, when you're writing. And you're doing it without expectation. And for you, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, so I was curious if you do this. Like when you write something, the next day, do you read it back as, and then do you ever find yourself going like, oh, wow, that was like, I'm pretty proud of that. Like, do you get a satisfaction?
I do. It's embarrassing to admit. And there's always that like kind of running joke that the person who looks at your social media accounts the most is you, because people tend to like have this really narcissistic, like, let me look through my own Instagram to see like what I posted. But I do that because I think the only way you can be a good writer is to write stuff that you'd want to read. And so I do read my own blog. It's weird and it might make people uncomfortable. And it's just the same feeling I get when I'll hear that musicians listen to their own music in the car or something. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. But it's really not. I mean, wouldn't you make music you want to listen to? Wouldn't you write something you want to read? And so there are times where I read it back. And I also have the other reaction. Sometimes I read them and I'm like, this isn't my best. But that's healthy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my goal from the beginning was I just wanted to entertain myself. But I also thought, I have a pretty keen sense of I'm not a total weirdo, so I think if I can entertain myself, it'll probably entertain others as well. And whatever happens, happens. If there's ever a professional opportunity, maybe or maybe not. But I just wanted to be proud of myself, and I wanted to always just read something back going, wow. And I never thought of myself as somebody that could write at all. I never did. And so, but I always admired people that could. And so it just takes, for me, it's taken years and years and years, but I really just write for me.
Yeah.
And in the sense of, and it's not an egotistical sort of narcissistic thing. I write because then I can go back the next day. Like, I am such a consumer of good content. Like last night I watched I try to always have like a really great movie or television series. I don't watch a ton of television or movies, but if I'm going to spend 2 hours to watch a movie, I want it to be like a good, really good film or television series. So I'm such a fan of really good art that I want to somehow contribute in some way, just so that I can read it back going like, well, that was pretty good.
Yeah, of course. I think there's no shame in saying that. If you didn't have that view, and there's some people who don't. I mean, I have a lot of blogger friends in the little networks I'm in, and I'll see some of them saying, like, I'm just not into it. I haven't been liking what I'm writing lately, or I'm not inspired. And it's like, those are the people that I start to think to myself, like, they're going to stop soon, because I can read that they're just over it. And I think you have to be excited about the stuff that you put out there.
Well, you have to be your own biggest fan, and not in a sense of everything I write is gold, because it's not. But I think you have to go, it's kind of like just being at the gym and going, I really don't want to do the push-ups today, but I know it's a really good idea and eventually it'll all work out. But if you just thought, well, my body, who cares? Then you're never going to go to the gym and you're not going to have that level of health or diet or whatever it may be, or just, the kind of coworker you are, or a family member or friend. If you don't really give a shit, then you're not going to put in the effort. But you have to do it, I think for me, the only thing that keeps me going, I mean, I get like no comments anymore. But my views are fine. But if I went and expected people to react, it would be a very difficult game. Whereas all I set it up the game for me to win is I just read back and go, hey, that wasn't bad. Or even if it was bad, at least you tried.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of okay with that.
It's interesting that we have different like measures of success, because for me, it is engagement. And I think because I don't get paid in a monetary sense, I need to feel like I'm still getting something back. So if a post of mine starts getting likes, shares, comments, to me, that's that validation and motivation to like keep doing it. Because if you get crickets, at least for me, I know we've talked about this and I know it doesn't really bother you, but if I write something and it just sits out there in the world with no, response or any kind of feedback at all, I just start to feel like, ooh, that was a failure. So, but then it gets into the whole factor of like social media reach and people don't see things. Yeah. And so you really can't beat yourself up, because it is true that on Facebook that, 12 people can possibly see the link you posted, which is total bullshit. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of marketing that you have zero control over as far as reach. And it's just one of those things where I think if you found, for me, I have about maybe 10 people whose opinions I really value, who know good writing, or I don't consider myself a good writer, but know like, if I'm writing well or not as well. And they'll tell me either way. That's really all I care about. Like the reason I even started talking with you is because I had asked, you had sent me a very nice tweet on something I'd written in the Powder Room, which was very sweet. And then it was basically just, hey, that's funny. But hey, I mean, to me, that's sweet. I appreciate that. And then I reached out and I said, who is this person? And she said, oh, she's one of our writers.
You reached out to someone from In the Powder Room, right?
Yeah, Sarah. And I said, who is she? Who is she? Is she? Because I just saw your picture. I saw you were very attractive, and I was recently single, and so I was like, oh, maybe she lives in Chicago. And sadly, you don't. Or actually, not sadly. It wouldn't. We would have killed each other anyway. Yeah, and the idea of dating me is not appealing to you. But at the time, I was like, oh, maybe she. And then I was like, oh no, she doesn't. And then I went, okay, well, who is she? And then Sarah said, oh, she's super funny. You should read her. And there, and that was that. So then I started reading it. But it was, it is one of those things where, like for me, I've always, and I think this is great about you, is like I look forward to reading your stuff because it makes me laugh, and but also makes me think sometimes. Like you did this piece about sort of your personal experiences with sort of sexual, uncomfortable, male situations and traumas and things. And I thought that was very important and didn't necessarily dive into the haha side
that wasn't
of you.
Really a funny one. That wasn't my funniest. But yeah. Again, it ties back into I can do that. I can write goofy, funny posts. I do a lot of ranting and, Larry David, curb your enthusiasm type, what's the deal with this type thing. But then the next day I'm like, hey, people are getting sexually harassed out here. Like it totally takes a different turn. And I feel like I can get away with that. So I like that I'm able to do that.
What I think that's what brings it to your voice, and I think that's what makes you compelling. Also, I do want to go back just to something that we haven't talked about this, but we did talk about the first time, which I think is just so funny. Is when you were growing up, you wanted to be a ventriloquist.
I did. I really did. I think I was like 7, 8, 9 in that range, and at that age, like Christmas is just everything to you. You're in like the pinnacle of like getting Christmas presents, and so we get that like big old JCPenney catalog, and me and my brother would always sift through it and rip out pages and what did we want, and Barbies and video games. And I found a dummy, a African American ventriloquist dummy by the name of Lester, and I decided then and there that I wanted to explore a career in ventriloquism. And
if you're online right now and you're wondering what this is, just Google Huggy Bear from what was Hawaii Five-0. He is the spitting image of.
Or you could Google Lester ventriloquist dummy and see the actual one that I owned. I owned it. My parents saw that on my Christmas list, these are the kind of parents I have. God bless them. I love them so much. But they are the kind of people who saw that I wanted this and actually bought it. And so on Christmas morning, I woke up to this like snazzy little curly-haired, plaid pants wearing.
It's got kind of like a leisure suit sort of thing.
Yeah, it does. It didn't work out. You know, I got to tell you that speaking with your mouth closed is a lot harder than people think. And it just, sadly, it just was a dream that had to die shortly after.
Well, also a 7-year-old girl doing a African-American male voice from the 70s speaking jive is probably not the easiest thing for a Long Island girl to do. Let's talk about your accent, because you don't really have one, except you live in an environment where all you hear are Long Island accents. So, you went away to college? Is that how you got
it? I went to school in Maryland. I went to Towson University, and I assure you, I had some kind of Long Island accent when I went there. But spending a couple of weeks around people from, Maryland, DC, and all different, it's not places that aren't that far away, but are enough that they have kind of a neutral accent. I heard the way I said certain things. I heard the way I said coffee and talk and walk. And I think I just quickly was like, "Ooh, God, that has to go away." And so I just kind of dropped it. I don't even think about it now, but I do hear it in family members and some other friends of mine who are lived here forever. And I'm like, God, they have really strong accents. And thankfully, I don't feel like mine is that bad. I think it'll come out occasionally in certain words, but.
Yeah, no, I totally expected when I first started talking to you, when you were like, I live pretty much on the beach in Long Island.
You expected Fran Drescher or Janice from Friends or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank God.
And well, just from the conversations we had online too, I was like, this is an abrasive Long Island. Every stereotype she probably has the 3-inch press-ons and the teased up hair.
The hooks I'm wearing right now are so big I could wear them around my waist.
What's that?
Earrings that I'm currently wearing. They double as a belt.
Well, and so, but I do want to go back to one thing, which was, what do you see as any sort of future for you in with respect to writing? Would you like to do anything more? Do you have aspirations of doing a book? Would you like to, write for television or movies? Do you just want to keep writing for yourself? What's your
that's a good question. I think every year I kind of set my own little personal goals for myself. So some of the ones I've had in the past were certain sites I wanted to write for. XO Jane was one of them. I'm a big fan. I know it's a little bit of a controversial site, but I kind of just had this hope, like, I want to write something that can go on that site, and I did it. And Huffington Post, obviously, which, you don't get paid, but it is a really good thing for your blogging resume, so to speak. So there's been things like that, but I think it's just doing more. I mean, you and I talk about blogging conferences, and I've always kind of ignored all of those emails, like, not for me. But I think I would like to start attending more of those types of things. I love stuff like this, podcasting, because I think it goes hand in hand with writing if you actually like to speak and tell stories that way. Again, other sites. I mean, I see all these opportunities to write for sites that I really love reading and admire, and so I would love.
I'm sorry, they're arresting several drug dealers out in front of my place. So
they're dropping your track phone right in front of your apartment as we speak.
Yeah, I'm flushing the stuff down the toilet as we're.
But yeah, no, it's little things like that. I think it's baby steps. It's not like become an accomplished New York Times bestselling author, because that's going to be something that I'd have to, take a lot of time and effort to work on. Maybe a book. I don't know. People always, especially when it comes to my dating stuff, I'm not a dating blogger, but when you're single, it gives you a lot of fodder for writing. And so people would always say, write a book, but I don't know. Maybe.
Well, when I was recently single, and I had a very devastating breakup, and I mean, breakups are devastating, for anyone, but I went to Allison and said, all right, I think I'm going to dip my toe in the dating water. What should I expect? Because I hadn't dated in like 3 years.
I'm the wrong person to ask, because I'm sure.
No, you actually gave me really.
Did I? What did I say? I don't even know.
You talked about how before the last time I was out there, Tinder didn't exist. I mean, it was just still like Match.com. It was eHarmony is where I'd met my previous girlfriend. So it was still somewhat, there was still a courtship process. I mean, Match was less so that way, but now it's just, game on sort of thing. And you were like, well, okay, here's the pros and cons, and here's the apps that you want to check out, and here's the ones you don't. And you said, just be aware it's really hard to get anyone's attention these days. And or keep anyone's attention because they're just getting hit, from all these angles. And men too, apparently.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, so the site Bumble is the one where women are supposed to write first. Well, not supposed to. You have to. You have to sort of initiate the conversation. I guess we're trying to avoid, like, dick pic situations. I don't know.
Sure.
But I found that, and this surprised guys when I would tell them this, but, like, I would get ignored. Like, I'd write I'd try to put some thought into it, and I'd write something witty or clever, or sometimes I'd just go pretty basic and would get nothing, just no response. And it's like,
why do you think that is?
I think you assume that people are on those apps because they take it seriously, but I think people are sometimes not, they're almost on there in a very passive way. And so they're not always checking it, or maybe I wrote them the same time that, like, a Mila Kunis lookalike wrote them, and so they're like, screw her. I don't know. I can't speak for it, but I think there's just this really...
or things just get lost in the shuffle, just accidentally.
Yeah, maybe, I guess. But it happened a lot, and then when I spoke to other girls, they would say, like, what's the deal with Bumble? Like, I write guys, they don't even answer. So it seems to be more likely than not that you're going to get ignored, which is just such a shitty thing for your ego, because... people always said when I first became single, like, do online dating. It's going to, like, boost your self-esteem. You're going to have all these guys who are writing you. And I was like, oh, cool. And then you kind of learn it's a little bit of both. Like, you'll get that, sure, but you'll also get people who are just, like, straight up stop talking or not respond or ask you, what your week looks like. But then when you give them dates, they don't respond to set anything up. So it's just like you're constantly feeling like you're just getting... just beat up from all angles, but it's exhausting. It really is.
It's so much energy, and I've always felt like, I mean, it's easy, right? You can literally be doing it in the bathroom, you can be swiping and writing a cute text or whatever. But honestly, I think I would have more success, and it would just be more. I think it would be more engaging to. In this case, I date women, so it would be more engaging, I think, just to go out. Literally, I'd probably have more success as well if I just walked around a park and, like, politely went up and started talking to women, which nobody really does. No,
it creeps people out now, I think, because
I think it does if you're a creep. I mean, if you're not a creep, I think you can. There's a way to do it. But yeah, you run the risk of immediate rejection because you're right. You could creep that person out. But not every, I mean, a lot of single women I talk to, they talk about, I just wish guys would do that. I don't know. What do you feel?
I absolutely feel that. I have not been a huge proponent of the online dating thing. I think it has made it easier, like you said, but almost to a fault, because you now have so many options in your pocket that I think it's created this world of, like, well, I probably can do better. And I don't mean better, like better looking necessarily or anything. I think it's just like, there's got to be, if I keep looking, I've got hundreds of women at my disposal. So let me see if there's someone even, better suited for me. Right. So you're always going to kind of give everyone, like, a small fraction of your attention because you're waiting to see, like, well, what else? I mean, people go on great first dates, get in the cab to go home, and sign on Tinder to be like, well, let's see what else. It's so shitty. It's so shitty.
It is. And also, I think it sets up, like, even in a broader scope, like, let's say a relationship does develop and then a wrinkle happens or a challenge happens. And all this, the person, it's so seductive. It's so easy to jump on an app and say, well, like you were saying, there's someone that's a better fit for me.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is people really don't work that way. There isn't perfect fits. And you just, if you even ask anyone who's been married 40 years, they'll laugh.
Right.
They'll just, you just keep showing up and you do the work and you keep giving the person all your love and what they want, and that you just kind of call to life. Like, it's not that complicated, but it's incredibly hard. And I think maybe with all of the opportunity, it gives people the impression that everything's supposed to be really easy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the real world stuff, while rare, is appreciated. And, not to be old school, because obviously, as you know, I consider myself a feminist, but I do have that old school, like, I would love it if I was out somewhere and was approached in a real life situation, whether it was a bar or the subway. But then we get into the whole other technology disaster that we're in, where I sit on New York City subways and I do see, young guys who I'm like, oh, look at him. And he's staring at his iPhone the entire time. I could literally be sitting there topless and he would not have noticed. So it's kind of, we all live in this world where if we're not looking for dates on our phones, we're just looking at our phones.
Yeah, you miss out on a lot. And I always like it. I'm glad I sort of became comfortable with sort of what I looked like back back before this technology existed, because it forced me. I kind of went, well, okay, I think if I talk to enough women, somebody's going to maybe want to go on a date with me. But I never thought it was a sure thing. So I went, I better talk to every beautiful woman I come across, because for the first 21 years of my life, I talked to 0 of them. And then I was like, if I want to like meet somebody, they're not coming to me. Like, that doesn't happen to me. So it forced me to get out there and just meet people. And I got rejected a million times. I mean, you're supposed to. Yeah. That's part of it. Yeah. And I just think that getting rejected online is real easy, and also easy to kind of get over.
Right.
But
you also create scenarios in your head. So if you're talking to a guy and things are going really well, and it's been a couple days of really witty banter and flirtation, and then all of a sudden he disappears, you can just kind of chalk it up to like your own thoughts and then be like, well, he obviously got hit by a bus because he's dead now. Because clearly we were really getting along well, and he was going to ask me out, and now tragically he's dead.
Well, or like, and then I find I'm the same way, or I find myself saying like, oh, I hope they're dead. Like it's not even like maybe they're dead. I just go, I'm just like, I hope they got stepped out in front of a bus. That would be, I wouldn't shed any tears for that person.
That's so funny. I actually was, really quickly, I was like ghosted in the past. And if people don't know what ghosting is, it's essentially whether you're having an online relationship or you've actually met someone in person and they just stop speaking to you, they fall off the grid, you no longer hear from them. And it did happen to me a while ago. And I was
like a guy you were dating, or what?
Yeah, we had gone on dates. Like we had been hanging out, and it was a significant amount of time.
All right, so how long of time had passed?
I mean, it was like 2 months. It was a long enough time.
Okay, so 2 months, you were going on a regular dating thing for...
I mean, we didn't see each other. We had not long distance. He was in the city, I was in Long Island, and we both worked. So there was some restrictions with how often we could see each other. So if you chalk it up to amount of dates, it was like 6 dates maybe. But
okay, enough to not just disappear.
And something weird happened. You can surmise, you can have theories. He had an ex-girlfriend that he had just broken up with before we met, so there was a chance he got back with her. I don't know. Maybe he just didn't like me, which is a hard pill to swallow. But regardless, I at one point was convinced he was dead because it just seemed so abrupt and so weird. And so I actually had a friend of mine call his office because I had his business card, because I was like, I think he died, like legit. I think he's deceased. And just 2 seconds later, the friend was like, he's not dead. He answered the phone. And I was pissed. I was like,
he
annoyed.
Just doesn't want to talk to you.
And my initial reaction was like, God damn it. Because I really wanted him to be like, oh, I called his office. And they were like, oh, Bob actually passed. And I'd be like, oh, good. It wasn't me. His name wasn't Bob.
Yeah, right. My friend, who sadly, my friend of mine just passed away. And one of the smartest things, he was, he lived a long life. And he was one of my good friends and also one of my greatest teachers. And he said the smartest thing maybe I've ever heard anybody say. He said, all you ever owe anyone is the absolute truth. Yep. And it's the hardest thing you'll ever do is to tell the truth. But that's all you owe people is actually the truth. Yeah. And when it comes to getting ghosted or, somebody like in my case, I won't get into the details of the breakup that I was in, but it was somebody who basically was not living her truth apparently, and then all of a sudden one day just needed to and she did it in a way I didn't appreciate, but when you get broken up with, nobody appreciates it the way people do it, but like you don't get, but it's like all that person would have had to do in your case is go, hey, I'm just really not into this. And it takes courage and it takes guts and it takes a tremendous amount of compassion and also accountability and just maturity to be able to say, I owe this to a person that I've gone out with more than twice, right? Or whatever it is. Or even more than once sometimes. And I just think it's the very least you can, it's kind of like waiting on an elevator, there's all like women tell me that guys will just bounce out in front of them. And again, it's kind of who cares? It's a stupid old thing. But it's like the very least somebody can do is go, well, I'll wait for the weaker person or an older person. Or it's like if you're on the subway, you don't sit if you're a dude, you stand and let it, But the point is like whether you're male or female and you're in a relationship of some degree with somebody, disappearing is. Like, I don't understand how those people sleep. I guess they sleep just fine.
Either. It's a lesson on human decency for sure. I think online dating has taught me a lot about things like that, about trust. I mean, I've pretty much experienced everything you can experience. I've been catfished, which I think I would always have thought I was too intelligent to fall for something like that.
So that means this is a fake person, right?
Right. Like I had matched with someone who was using fake photos who turned out to be like some D-list actor, and I just didn't know who the actor was, so I didn't pick up on it. But I figured it out pretty quickly, but it's just like you have enough of these instances and it's really hard not to get jaded, and it's really hard not to say like, God, mankind's kind of shitty. But I think what I've learned in the last 6 months to a year has been to try to stop being so negative about dating in general and kind of change things about myself and, how I interact in the dating world. But you can get into a whole podcast just about modern dating. And I think that's why a lot of my writing has reflected that sort of world, because there's a lot to learn there.
Do you think you'll write about the politics now that the election's coming up in a few days? Do you think you'll continue to write about it?
I mean, I'm due for at least one more. I mean, we've got a couple days till we know who our new president is. So I think that in between now and then, I've got to say something. I don't know. I don't love writing about politics because I think it can be a little divisive, and I know that it's not a subject a lot of people really want to hear about. But I also, on the other end, think it's so important, and there's so many things people put in their blogs that are like, all right, well, this isn't really super important. There's other things, that I feel are worth getting some airtime. But I'm also tired of all this crap, to be honest. I just want it to be over, but I think it could go either way. I mean, if Donald Trump's our president, come Tuesday night, I feel like there's going to be something I'm going to have to say about it, but I don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. I think, no matter what, I always I like to be more of the observer, and I like the fact that you're more actively engaged in, sort of the argument, and to me, I'm more about observing and making fun of the whole situation. And in some ways it's way more cowardly because it's easy to goof on everything. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to pick a stance and go, I'm going to defend it, and in our case, write humor around it to support it, or maybe against the other side or whatever. But for me, I can goof on all of it by not taking a stance, and by doing that, it makes it easy. Like comedically, that's easy to do, but it's actually not as fulfilling because I don't stand for anything. And I'm not saying I never stand for anything, but if I notice I'll do that, I'll shy away from actually having an opinion. And it's easy for sometimes just to be like, well, it's too much information and try to have an actual opinion.
Totally.
But that's a cop out too. There is a way to have an opinion and to do the research to have an opinion. And I appreciate so much that about you, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I'm glad we're writing together, because you push me to have opinions, and your opinions are I sort of grew up I'm in the Midwest, so I'm kind of I don't really want to be subversive and talk about, what I think about anything, because I'd rather just laugh at all of it.
Yeah, I get that stance. I get it. I mean, politics are ugly. I mean, this past year has been just really daunting and has made for a lot of rocky relationships. I mean, I've had some friendships, not friendships, but people that I've had in my life, acquaintances or social media, whatever, that I just can't get along with because of our differing opinions and some things that they've said and posted. And I mean, I've defriended so many people. It's ugly, but it's something I'm really passionate about. I really don't blog about it so much. It's a lot of my social media presence as a whole. Twitter's probably where I take to the most to put my opinion. There's something about that forum that I feel really comfortable just being like, I'm putting everything I believe in here. The blog, if you read, every blog post I've written in the last 365 days, there's minimal politics in there. But I do incorporate it in some way. So that post you referenced about my personal experience with sexual harassment obviously ties into the recent election and some allegations made against the Republican, nominee. So in that way, it'll be included. But I'm not necessarily, I don't want to be a political blogger, and I don't want to bore everyone with posts that are about that subject all the time.
No, I appreciate your passion for having an opinion. And I think that, no, honestly, it's rare, and it's easy to have an opinion. And what's the expression about opinions? It's like, or maybe it's cowboy hat. What's it? Cowboy hat. Sooner or later, every asshole has one or something. It's like same thing with opinions, But the idea is that, there are ways to have intelligent opinions about something that are not defending necessarily your own stance, just, your own ideology. It's more just like, no, I actually have a relatively intelligent thing to say about whatever it might be, politics or anything. And I think that, you have that. I feel like to some degree I have that. And I'm excited. I hope everyone, if you're not familiar with Allison, we'll wrap up, but you can find her at AllisonArnone.com. It's AllisonArnone.com. She's also extraordinarily active, as she just mentioned, on Twitter. You can find all of her social media, Facebook, Instagram. You're not really a Pinterest person, but
I don't do it. I did it and I got off. It's too overwhelming. You're going to be shitty at your social media channels if you have 12 of them you're active on. So I got to cut myself off.
And so in addition to that, Allison and I write a column, and every month we pick a new topic, and then we ask for your opinion, your questions, and when we give our opinions and our advice. So thank you again for your time, the second time.
I hope if this doesn't go through, then our friendship as we know it is over.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing too is, if this doesn't, I just out of respect for you will never contact you again. Like I will never. I will be ghosted from your life. But you know what? I'll write a handwritten apology. I don't have your home address. So I'll have to send it somewhere. Maybe your mom will give it. I'll send it to your mom or something. But your parents. I will be a handwritten apology, and for your own benefit, I have removed myself voluntarily from your life. I am clearly a destructive force, and
I'm sure it worked. But thank you for having me.
All right, say goodbye.
Goodbye.